right, guys, so we're going to start a new little series on my YouTube channel here where I'm going to show you guys from start to finish kind of my process is how I approach my design and my production of my series boxes that I do for Serial Resin Co. So we're going to start this out by showing, we're going to start by doing some prototyping for my house bust and or magnets. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet for this next box. This next one coming up is going to be 30 Days of Night theme and also house. I have busts made for the 30 Days of Night and also for the house pieces. But again, I always start every month before I do it with prototyping to figure out sizing and which pieces I'm actually going to go with. So let's first start with, I'm not going to do the same thing for the 30 Days of Night piece because it's essentially the same process. But what I have here is my files here. So the first thing I'm going to pull into Light Sheet Slicer is the House Witch bust. We're going to take a look at this. I'm going to print this one, the bust, and also two different versions of the magnet. And I'll show you the process once we go downstairs into my studio of how I approach that. The first thing I do is I select the actual piece that I'm putting in here. I'm going to change the scaling, change it from millimeter to inches. I like to work in inches instead of millimeters, and I will jump it by 1,000%. And that's going to bring it to a y-axis, which is going to be the height of 1.4. I always do mine for the series box in 3-inch. So we will see this first. So let me rotate this. And if you guys want more in-depth, if you're curious about resin printing, obviously I used to, years ago, do molding. But now technology has gotten so much better now that it's easier for me and also better with quality to actually resin print my stuff. Yes, it costs more than filament printing, which most people do is filament printing, but I do not do that for my business. We do the resin printing. So first, let me just kind of scale this and kind of just make sure this is what I want. I'm going to scale it larger for a second just so you guys can see the design itself. So let me just go up to a 6-inch just so you guys can see what we're looking at here. So we, for this box, are going to be doing the House Witch. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with a bust for the main piece for 30 Days a Night or for house, but I'm kind of think I'm going to do the House Witch. I know it's a more popular item for the box than if I was to do 30 Days a Night, but a lot of people that voted for these themes also liked 30 Days a Night. So I'm going to take it back down, as you see, to the 3-inch. I'm also going to move it a little bit over to the side. So we will put that there. So we're going to do a prototype test of that. I'm also going to bring up the magnets. We did two different versions of this. I print these flat on the plate. So let me just bring that up. I will do the scaling. Again, we're going to move this into inches, which it already is. So I'm going to just jump it by 1,000%. I always start with 1,000 and I'll move up from there if I need to. I need to repair this. We fix the repair. That is going to be way too small. I want to make this at least 2 inches. So there, you can kind of see it there. What I will do now is I will select it, which it is already selected. I will hit it to on the plate. Whoops. Sorry. We will do it on the plate, and I'll select it then as well. I have to move it down. So we will move this down. And have it on the plate there so you can see. The next thing we're going to do is pull up the other one. So we have one where she's kind of turned to the side, as you can see there. And then we have one where it's kind of like a front-on profile. Again, this is kind of part of the prototyping process. I don't know what I'm really going to do until I test. So that's why I do this every month. Let's turn it a little. We're going to move this to the side. We're going to bring this one up. We will scale it. We'll jump that to 1,000% as well. Again, this is kind of my process, but I will make it a 2-inch one. Little magnet. Actually, we're going to make this 3 inches. No, we're going to do that as 2.5. I think that'll be the best. So 2.5. You can see this one needs to be green, so it's actually set to the side. But I'm actually going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to do this at an angle. And then we'll bring this up. And then we have it kind of angled, as you guys can see. Bring it down just a hair. This, again, is just testing. So I have one flat. I have one kind of angled. We're going to test it out, see what's better. I always angle my my models back because if you do it straight on, the possibility of a failure during the printing process is a lot better than if you angle it, because then there's more surface area for the supports. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the supports. The only ones I don't need to support is the magnet that's flat on the plate, because it will be stuck to the plate as it prints. And I also do it on the other one as well. So let me first generate my supports. You can go in here and you can kind of tinker with different things and add more supports and stuff like that if you would like. I typically just do a generated automatic one. And then what I'm going to do here is add a raft. What a raft is it's going to give it kind of like a solid, as you can see there, a solid base for it to print on. So the raft is set for that. I'm happy with that. We're also going to do this. We're going to add supports to this one as well. And again, this is all going to be the testing phase. We're also going to add a raft to that one as well. And there we go. I'm satisfied with the setup here. So we are going to do test prints of this. So we will prepare this. I'm not going to bore you with it actually exporting. So I will see you guys downstairs as we set up the printer. All right, guys. So we are downstairs in the studio, and I am prepping one of my Elegoo Jupiters. I'm only running the one machine now, because I'm only prototyping, so I don't need to run all 3 of them. But when I do the actual production, once we have all the orders, I run all 3 machines at the same time. The reason I do that is it eliminates it being more days than it needs to be for the printing process. And it's just a lot easier to run 3 than doing 1 and resetting prints every time I have to do a new plate. So at this point, I'm actually unscrewing the leveling screws on the side. Every time you set a print, you have to reset the axes of the plate for leveling. They say with Jupiters that once you set them once, you don't have to redo it. I do it every time anyways, just because I don't trust that. And with the cost of resin, I don't want failed prints as much as possible. What I did there is I put one of the instruction sheets, it's like a millimeter thickness piece of paper on the actual LCD screen. The reason I do that is once I lower the plates, it will raise it to the exact millimeter that I need for clearance. I'll go further in depth in another video of what I mean by that, but for the sake of time on this video, because it is going to be a long video, I'm not going to get too far in front of it. So I'm just shaking up the resin now. With Serial Resin Co. and everything that I make, I use ABS like resin, which is super durable. I've used other resins in the past that weren't ABS like, and they seem to be more brittle. And obviously, I want the best that I can for my customers, so I am going to spend a little bit extra on resin that is ABS like. I just set off the tank on the side, as you guys can see there. I had to reset the leveling, so that's why it kind of jumped for a second there. I hit one of the wrong buttons, which happens sometimes, so I had to re-level it. So that's what I'm doing right now. Once I have the distance proper from the LCD screen, I then ratchet down the screws to make sure everything is level. This is one of the parts of the process that is super important when you resin print. Definitely, if you're getting into this type of thing, you want to get really familiar with your machine and the best way to level for your production. So then I'm just doing the final screw down of the top. I do this very slowly. I don't want to over crank it and push down into the screen or have it go beyond where I've set the axes. You can see I pull out the piece of paper there, and then I will actually set the machine that will not go past that distance once the tank is there filled with resin. And then at this point, I'm just raising it up so I can put the tank underneath. Resin printing is super interesting. I could talk for many videos just on the process itself and how it actually works, and I may do that depending on how popular this video is, but I wanted to do this because I want my customers to see the process of how I actually do the boxes so they can see how much work is actually involved, and also just for people to learn, because I've noticed on YouTube there isn't a lot of videos that show the complete process from the design phase, cleaning process, through the production process, through the finishing process. So I know this is going to be a long video, but for those of you who are sticking around to watch the whole thing, I feel you will learn a lot. Because I'm only doing the prototyping in this phase and only making the 2 magnets and the 1 bust, I'm not filling the resin tank like I normally would. It would be a lot fuller if I was printing multiples at a time, but I just wanted to add just enough that I can make these 3 pieces for the prototypes. I grabbed the file that we started making upstairs in the first part of this video, and I put it on a jump drive there, and I'm just loading it into the machine now, and I'm bringing up the file, as you can see right there, and then I am starting the process. So you'll see the plate itself will go down into the resin, and I believe when I made the file for this, it was 2,500 stills, and the way it actually works is each millimeter as it raises will be 1 photo. So based on what this one was rendering at, this will be, for the test prints, will be an 8.5 hour print. I have done super large pieces over the past, if you guys have been following my work, where I've literally had pieces take over 2 days to make. Again, this is why I do multiple printers at the same time, so I can do more pieces in a less amount of time. Okay, so it is the next day. It took about 9 hours for this to print. So right now I'm just kind of taking it off of the chassis harness there that holds the plate in. So you guys can see what a finished print kind of looks like. So obviously those are the 3 pieces that we designed yesterday. So we have the bust and 2 versions of the magnet. So the next step, I will say, please be very, very careful. I'm using caustic chemicals that are very, very flammable. I'm actually spraying denatured alcohol on the plate into the trash can there. This stuff is very, very flammable. Always wear eye protection when you are doing the cleanup process. So basically what I'm doing now is I sprayed it down a little bit just to get some of the excess resin off with the denatured alcohol. And then I am using the putty knife to get the magnets off and also the bust off. And then I'm taking the plate back over, scraping any excess resin that was trapped underneath off into the trash. And then I will also be using the denatured alcohol to spray it down on both sides of the plate to get all of that excess resin off. I will just note that I use resins that have to be cleaned with an alcohol-based substance. There are resins out there that can be water washed. They are called water soluble resins. I do not use those. I find that they are not very good, and I also find that they're way more expensive because you're not having to deal with odors and stuff like that. Down in my studio, I actually have a nice ventilation system that I've set up. You can see some of the yellow piping right there, and it actually runs out of my house. And I run that at all times while I am downstairs. I also have fans going as well. So I'm just placing the plate back up in the machine, and then I am going to be taking the screws out of the side of the tank there and emptying out the resin back into the jug of resin that I have, just so I can use it for the next time. Again, like I was saying, when we set up the printer, that sometimes you don't need to reset your plate. Sometimes you also don't need to take the resin out of your vat and also to clean it or anything like that. I always clean mine after each print. It's kind of just because I'm a little anal with that, and also because I will show you once I empty out all the resin back into the container there. Now, typically you should use some sort of funnel or something like that, but I've done this so many times. I've literally made thousands of pieces, so I'm pretty quick at doing it this way. I just take my time, as you can see, so I don't drip anything anywhere and get it back into the container. But that little yellow scraper tool is great to have, and you'll see why in a second once I am done. All right, so I skipped through a little bit just not to bore you, because it takes a while to obviously pour that out. So I didn't want you to just be staring at the screen there. But as you can see with that scraper tool, this is why I use this. So I can try to get as much of that excess out of the tank as possible. And then here in a second, you're going to see why I actually remove all of the resin and clean it before each use. So I'm going to take the denatured alcohol and clean it out, but I'm first going to do a dry run, just trying to get that out. But you can see, if you can see there's baked on resin that was on the outside of the plate. You can see it kind of in a rectangle form there. The reason I do this and I clean that out is because that happens a lot. And once you go to do your next print, that might be blocking some of the image for your layer when it prints. So sometimes you will have failures because of that. So that is why I clean the tank every time. And I will actually remove them. I'm not going to do it now in this part of the video, but I will actually remove them carefully so I do not poke or puncture the FEP sheet on the tank. Those clear translucent film is called a FEP. Also, they are expensive for what they are. So I try to make sure I keep mine in good condition at all times. You do have to replace them every once in a while, but I try to make them last as long as possible. So again, I'm just putting the excess resin that we had in there back in. Now we're going over to my cleaning table. Now this is the part that is very, very dangerous, so please be careful. Always wear eye protection. I would also wear a respirator. I'm just going to move that for now, and I'm going to put down a paper towel so I can put the pieces then over there once they are done soaking in the denatured alcohol. So this is my process for cleaning every single piece that I make for Serial Resin Co. You'll see here I'm just cleaning the tools for a second, setting them aside. And then I'm actually going to put the pieces in this little metal container. Don't use plastic if you're going to use denatured alcohol, just because it will erode away at the plastic. It is that powerful. It's essentially kerosene. Again, please be very, very careful with denatured alcohol. It is extremely flammable. So what I do then is I put the pieces in there, and I will pour denatured alcohol into my metal container and just let them soak for a second. And what that's doing is it's actually burning off a layer, the outside layer of the resin. So it's getting it down to like a base resin. And I just kind of swash it around and clean off all the pieces. So you can see there's one of the magnets there. And then I will set them to the side. So I'm doing that with each one. And I actually do multiple baths. So I'm just pulling off the supports there, as you can see with that one. I tend to soak them first before I try to pull off the supports. It makes it easier. Some pieces are a lot more difficult to remove the pieces because it depends on the way that it was angled when you made it. But these weren't too bad, so I figured I would just do it right there on camera for you. So yeah, it was just that, and then there was just a couple little straggler pieces I had to get. I have a little tool, which you'll see I grab here in a second, because there was a little piece still within the breast there of the piece. I thought it would come off by soaking it again and just thinking it would fall off, but it was still stuck on there. So you'll see I grab this little tool and I will pick it out. There was also a little piece in the mouth that was still stuck in there, and I also picked that piece out as well. Obviously those are like little teeth, so there is some sort of little support that was in the mouth as well. So again, I'm just dipping it again just to make sure I'm getting all that stuff off on all the excess, and then I'll set it aside. And then I'm transferring the denatured alcohol back into the original container. You can use this denatured alcohol multiple times. I used to just do clean denatured alcohol every time I clean something, but it got way too expensive. Those containers of denatured alcohol are $25 a piece. So I try to reuse them as much as possible, but at some point it will get saturated with resin. You will have to use or buy new denatured alcohol. So I'm just grabbing the pieces there now, and I'm going to set them, after they've had that denatured soak, onto the paper towel and just let them dry for a second. And then I'm going to clean up the table and get all that resin and denatured alcohol that had fallen off onto the table. I use these awesome, they're like gym mats on my table. They seem to work really, really well. So if stuff like resin or glue or anything like that goes on them, you can easily clean it up. I've been using those same panels for almost 4 years now. Yes, you will use a lot of paper towels in your production. That's just something, it's just part of the name of the game. You can go a little bit more expensive and do shop towels if you want, but... So again, we're just kind of looking at the pieces there now. The flat magnet, I would say out of the 3 pieces, that's my least favorite. I did like the angled one better, kind of that side profile. And yeah, as I'm showing there. But that's part of prototyping. That's why you got to do it, to figure out what is best and what will be best for the box. And that's why I go through this process every time. Plus, I need to make the pieces because I have to do prototype painting to figure out what I'm going to do. So yeah, and then there is the bust. So the next stage of this process is we have to cure the pieces. Depending on the time of year, they are cured by UV rays. So sometimes I will set them outside of my house on my deck to cure. If it's like the middle of the summer, we are in the fall phase now. It is middle of October. So the sun isn't very sunny out. So I have a home built UV curing station. I have 3 directed light UV curing lights. And then I used a large motorized jewelry, I guess they're called jewelry display machines or something like that. and I kind of just built it myself. And I built a box that is all covered in aluminum foil, so it will direct all of the light back. So that had to sit there for a few minutes to do that, and I'm now showing the finished piece after it has been cured. There is still some more steps. As you guys can see, there are some burrs on the resin. So I do have a burring tool. I will cut them down. I will also do some sanding. I do that every time before I prep for primering. So I didn't want to bore you with showing you that part. That's just something I do before the painting process. That was the flat one. This, out of the 3 pieces, was my least favorite. It's still a cool piece, but it's just not as cool as the other pieces. And obviously, I want the best for my customers. This magnet was obviously better than the other one, but I have to admit, after looking at everything, the piece that I will go with for this box will be the bust. Now, again, there's 2 pieces in my series boxes. I will not bore you with showing you the 30 Days a Night piece. It's the same process that I'm doing with these. I will prototype, and then I will figure out which piece I will use. All right, so we're at the stage now where I have done a flat black primer on the house bust. So what we're going to do now is essentially I'm going to use a lilac spray paint just to kind of emulate a dry brush almost technique. So what I'm doing here is I've turned the piece backwards, so I'm only shooting it from the top angle down. The reason I'm doing that is essentially I'm doing, like I said, a dry brush technique, but with spray paint. So if I were to go from the other direction and go upwards, I would hit all the cracks and everything that are still black, which I'm trying to avoid doing to emulate that type of look. I could just do this by doing a dry brush technique with a paintbrush, but I find it in this type of way to be good for like the base coat, and then I'll go in with other different colors with the actual dry brush technique. It's just quicker, especially when I'm doing like 50 boxes. I like to do my prototypes essentially how I would do the pieces for the boxes, so I can get as close as possible to what the final production pieces would look like. From here, I'm just kind of hitting the sides as well with that same color. But as we bring it upstairs to my dry brush painting studio, where I do mainly most of my work down here in my studio, is where I do a lot of the aerosol-based painting. All right, guys, well, we're upstairs in my other paint studio. This is where I tend to do all my dry brush work or hand painting work. The first thing I always do, it's just the horror fan in me, is I always throw on a movie when I paint. And today I decided to paint to Sleepaway Camp 2. So the first thing I do normally when I start this process is I'll go online and I'll look for screen grabs from the film to try to find my paint scheme and how I'll go about this process. What I like to use is my dry brush palette. I recommend making a dry brush palette. I'll do another video on how that process is at some point. But first we're going to take a look at just doing a little bit of shadow highlights on the face, because as you guys know in the film, the witch character is not just like a purplish, bluish kind of color. There's also some whites and some like light flesh color going through there as well. So I'm just doing a little bit of light flesh dry brush on the face just to kind of lighten it up. Again, I'm not putting it on too thickly because I do want to see the purples still come through as well as the blacks. The next step after that part is I want to start on the hair. So I found like a corky colored auburn brown type of color. So I'm just kind of dry brushing that in, as you can see here. Again, I just want to make sure that I'm just being light with it. I'm not super saturating the paintbrush with paint as I'm doing this, because you still want to see the separation of the individual hairs as much as possible. So you can kind of see there, I'm just kind of following the line from the hair to the chest of the woman. And we're just kind of finishing it up here. Just doing a paint match, just make sure I like it. Again, you can always go back in and fix things. The next step is to paint the dress. The woman in this, or this character, wears almost like a satin pink fuchsia color, like nightgown type of thing. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just kind of painting this process. When I do the finishing work at the end, I'm going to make this a different finish than the rest of the piece. So it'll be like a matte on the body and the hair, but on the nightgown itself, it'll be almost like a satin color. So it'll be a little bit shinier, just to show the contrast between what a piece of clothing for satin would be versus the face and hair. Next, I'm going in and just doing the teeth here. I chose like it's almost like a ochre yellow, but it's a little bit lighter than that for the teeth. It seemed to match up really well with the image. From here, I chose like I forget the name of it. It's almost like it's in between an orange and a red, but it matched perfectly with the source image for the lips. Really makes a difference, breaking up that contrast of the teeth and the face, having that nice bright red lipstick color. So the next stage is to do the whites of the eyes. I like to use a dotting tool for this. You can get these in lots of different sizes, but I find these awesome for doing eyes, and you'll see later on when I do the pearl necklace as well. But I chose one of the smallest ones because this is obviously a 3-inch bust, so these eyes are super, super tiny. But I'm just going in there, taking my time, making sure that I'm getting that in there perfect. You can just see these little things just start to bring the character to life. Now I'm going in and actually doing the black dot on the eye. They're so small that it's so hard. You wouldn't even really tell if I were to choose like an eye color. And honestly, from the screenshots from the film, you can't even really tell what the eye color is anyways. At this point, I'm going to start dotting the pearl necklace. I found this was the best way instead of actually putting it in the design itself into the resin. Just figured we would do it after the fact during the paint job. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, just kind of following along the line. Because the way her skin folds there, I kind of wanted to make it a little awkward, not so symmetrical, so it looks more realistic. It looks good. So this is the final stage. We're doing the matte spray to seal the piece. Again, once this part is done and dries, I like to give it a nice 12 hours just to set before I do the gloss on the satin dress part of the pink of the character. So at the end, I will show you the finished product. I will also go in and do the eyes with some epoxy and also the teeth just to make them look a little gnarlier. Okay, so we are on to the final stage now. For this stage, normally, if I was sealing the entire piece with like a satin gloss, I would just spray it. But because I'm only trying to focus on a certain section of this piece, which would be like the satin blouse that the house witch wears on the pink there, I'm actually going to paint it on with something called triple gloss. It's called triple thick triple gloss from Deco Art. This stuff is amazing. If you've never used this, I highly recommend it. Again, it's just a paint on application, but it keeps things looking wet, or that high gloss sheen that you might be looking for. So again, that's kind of what I'm doing here now, is just finishing the piece after I've done the initial sealing downstairs in the studio. So just doing this last finished piece. So what I did there is I put it on here, and then I also put it on the mouth and the eyes to gloss it up. So this is the finished piece. So this is what everyone will receive in their November box for the main mini bust piece. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for following along this video and seeing the process from production of what I do for my pieces with Serial Resin Company. Have a great day.